Hey, Brendan here. Welcome to the channel and thanks for tuning in. Well, this show is going to round out my series that I did. It was really the college incoming freshmen. I did the quarterbacks, I did the running backs, I did the wide receiver. Those three shows are already dropped on this channel. Go check them out. But now we're going to talk about our top tight ends headed into college football. I'm going to be joined again by my podcast co-host, Jason DiRienzo. We're going to give you our top 7 top tight ends. So you play C2C, you play Devy. If you're in the middle of a C2C supplemental draft, you're going to want to watch this show. We're going to break down the top 7 tight ends that, could hit our dynasty roster. Now, these players are going to be 2027 draft eligible players. So we're going to have to wait 3 years, but that's what we do on this channel, man. We are giving you an early look at future dynasty assets. So hit that subscribe button, even if you play Dynasty, and got tons of content on this channel as well to help you scout future classes. All right, let's get to the show. Our top 7 tight ends headed to college football as freshmen. Thanks for watching. So I'm going to kick us off here and talk about my first guy, Jaden Reddell. Really liked his film a lot. He 4-sport athlete, played basketball, baseball, track and field, and of course football. I thought he was more of a receiver than a tight end, but his fluidity is kind of my scouting notes here that really stood out. His versatility, high point ability, I thought was really good, and he's got legit deep speed. And Georgia has got a very deep room, but I also have here he's a field stretcher and could be a vertical weapon. So it was between Reddell and the next player that I think you're going to talk about is my number 2 guy. But Jaden Reddell, Georgia running or tight ends have been hitting our dynasty rosters, and it's a deep room right now with Urasek and Delp, and Lucky Lawson is also there. So this is going to be a long-term hold. But the skill set that I saw on the field was really good. I came away super impressed, and you could see the 4-sport athlete that he is on the field, just with, like I said, his fluidity, his versatility. He was more like a wide receiver than a tight end. I was really impressed with Jaden Reddell.
He's one that I really like too. He's my tight end too. I think you covered him really well. And the multi-sport athlete is definitely a box you want to check when it comes to the tight end position. Just making sure that that's there, because there's definitely it correlates to the transition to the NFL based on what we've seen, which is what got me so hyped up on Luke Lachey last year, seeing his athleticism and multi-sport athleticism too. So I like that call. Reddell looks like he's going to be another special Georgia tight end in the future. But I got Caleb Odum as my number 1 tight end. And, he kind of remind me a lot of what you saw with Jaden Reddell. I like the basketball background that he has. You could absolutely see that in the game film. The athleticism's there. He's very competitive at the catch point. I like the instant acceleration. The long speed looks to be there. He's very physical, fights through his route, fights in line. Seems like a pretty decent blocker from the film that I saw. So I think he's just really well-rounded. And then on an Alabama team that is looking for an identity at tight end, I think that he could fill in really well. And that will kind of well balance this offense too, and be a nice safety valve for whatever quarterback is under center. So Caleb Odom to me looks like a guy who could translate to the NFL pretty easily if his development stays, on course in his collegiate career.
Yeah, Caleb Odom, he is my number 2. So we've kind of got the same guys at 1 and 2, but we've have them flip flop. They're 1A and 1B for me as well.
Right.
The thing that I think all your points are very well. Looking at my scouting notes here, the one thing I had on here that you did mention how good of a blocker he was in the second level. There were several films and shows where he, plays rather, that he was out there just in front giving blocks when he wasn't part of the play. He kept himself engaged in that play, and he's getting a ton of buzz right now in Bama that he could be converted to a wide receiver. So, he's a little on the thin side, as far as weight, given his size, but he might end up being a converted wide receiver. And you're talking about someone Alabama looking for an identity when it comes to the tight end room. I think there's just a need for identity in the wide receiver room. I think it's pretty much wide open for someone to emerge in that offense to be the go-to guy. Caleb Odom. I don't know if you noticed or not, but I drafted him in our C2C supplemental draft. So I got a share already. I took him, I think, in round maybe 6 or 7, maybe 5.
Something
I'm
like
not
that,
sure.
yeah.
But in any case,
I think
I
it's
had
5.
I'm watching these tight ends and this guy's popping on the film. And I said, I got to get a share of this guy. So I took him right there. So, yeah, Caleb Odom, number 2. Who's your number 2? You said it was Jaden Reddell.
Yeah, I got Jaden Reddell, and I agree with every point that you made about him. I think he could be a special talent.
Okay, so my number 3, I'm going to the Iowa well and going with Gavin Hoffman. The physicality just popped with this guy on the film. That is what I have right now on my scouting notes I'm reading here. He was a really aggressive blocker. I loved his explosion off the line of scrimmage. There were several plays where he was at the end of the line of scrimmage where he just shot like a cannon right off the line. I saw the acceleration and that I love to see, especially from a tight end, at the end of the line, just immediately going vertical, putting stress on the linebackers and DBs. Thought he was a solid route runner. Saw many sharp breaks within his routes. He did a couple comeback routes, but always stayed engaged. And it's an Iowa tight end. So, Luke Lachey is there, and Addison Estrenga, as it looks like, is the guy's second.
Something like that, yeah.
So, again, all these tight ends that we're talking about, you're going to be waiting for these guys. I mean, none of these players I'm sure are going to get immediate play year one. They all got to get bigger, just like my deep dive player we're going to talk about, right? He had to put on weight before he could really get on the field. So a lot of these, like you said, players are going to need more development. But Gavin Hoffman just really popped. You know me, I'm all about physicality, and the guy just looked like he was athletic and physical. So I got him at number 3.
Yeah, I really like him. He's in my top 7, so I'm glad you got him in there early and talked about him. It makes my life a little bit easier when we get to him. But my number 3 is going to be Penn State tight end Luke Reynolds, and I came away really impressed with what I saw. I like the speed that he showcases. I think he's got pretty good acceleration. There's manipulation within his route running at the top of his routes. I like what he was able to do there. I see the vertical explosion when he gets up for contested situations. And I think he does a really good job of just manipulating and navigating the seam and zone coverage and exploiting those soft spots. So I think he could really fit nicely with the Penn State offense. Tyler Warren's there, but he's going to be going off to the NFL. And there's a couple guys that are going to be in front of Reynolds. But I think with this particular type of talent, we've seen Penn State use multiple tight ends, whether they're blocking or at least being deployed as a pass catcher. Reynolds can do both. And I feel really good about probably seeing him sooner rather than later. Maybe not this upcoming year, obviously, but going into 2025, he's going to be a guy that you'll be probably happy you have on your roster. So Luke Reynolds is number 3 for me.
Reynolds did not make my top 7.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't.
You're a Penn State guy, so what held you back?
What held me back a little bit, he just didn't seem to create a lot of separation in his routes, and he seems just didn't have a ton of speed. We, like you said, we watch all these one by one right after each other, and I just like these other players better. So I mean, he's in my top 10, but he just didn't make my top 7. But listen, tight end, again, just like Iowa tight ends, Penn State tight ends, good chance that they're going to get some run in the NFL, the way they develop tight ends up there at Penn State.
And he needs to gain some weight as well. Like these guys, I feel good about Penn State getting him that weight.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll put 20 pounds on him season 1, no problem at all. My number 4 tight end, I went with Christian Bentancur. I think that's how you say his name. Clemson,
correct. Yeah.
Clemson tight end. He was number, I believe, 4 in the class overall. He's the second highest rated Clemson tight end that Clemson ever selected. Jake Briddingstall was the first. So now this guy didn't play inline a lot. That's what we kind of talked about at the top of the show. A lot of the Hudl film that we watched, a lot of the plays were not inline plays. You have to assume that a lot of these players did play inline, but nonetheless, pass catching is what we really care about in fantasy anyway. But I really, really liked his movement skills, and his athleticism popped on film. Thought he was physical. I thought he was really elusive. And what I really liked was his contact balance. He seemed to be really strong lower half. Guys were just bouncing off him in high school. I don't know what kind of competition level, especially watching the tight ends. They all look so much bigger than the other players on the field, you know, and rightfully so. I'm sure some of these guys went up about, against some like really small players, but his ball tracking stood out. And, apparently he ran a 4.5 and his hands looked really good. So 4.5 tight end, that's a pretty good speed that he ran apparently in high school from the research that I did. Just like what I saw, just again, just a
Yeah.
gut feeling watching the film, and created space, movement skills, could stop on a dime, redirect. It just looked like he was, super shifty out there with good lateral movements. So Christian is my tight end 4.
Yeah, I liked him too. He's in my top 7. I think the only thing that's holding me back is the recent development of tight ends at Clemson. I have high hopes for Jake Brenningstool still. I hope that we see something from him. It'll make me feel a little bit better about Christian because I actually think you're right. I think he's a phenomenal talent. I'm going to go over to my tight end 4, and I'm going with Amir Jackson, the Florida tight end. Watching him, he is just a fluid athlete. He's definitely raw, but the upside of the athleticism, you see it on film immediately. I like the pass catching ability. I like the fluidness within, just the way he navigates the field. I think he's got good field vision. As far as him being able to separate and stuff, I'm not too sure about that portion of it, but I immediately see the upside of the athleticism. He doubles as a basketball player too. He's very dominant on the basketball court. And I just think that the length and everything that he delivers from what we've seen out of Florida, looking for an identity within the tight end, and when Kyle Pitts was there, he elevated the quarterback, and the quarterback didn't necessarily elevate him, but they helped each other out. I think this could be very similar with DJ Lagway and Amir Jackson. So I think the two of them with that athletic upside is going to be a lot of fun to watch. So Amir Jackson is my tight end 4.
I like it. I did like him as well. He's just outside my top 7. My 5th player, I'm really kind of excited about. This is a wild card pick, all right, but I
Mhm.
really love the story. I love what you see on film, and so listen to this whole story. Did you watch any Carter Nelson?
I like him. I just didn't know what to do with him.
I know, and you knew it. I knew you were going to say that because
Yeah.
of what his background is. I knew you were going to say that. So let me
Well,
explain what
it's
Jason's
the
talking about.
size, the background, but go ahead because
Yeah,
I love that you're gonna tell it.
Yeah, so he's from Nebraska. He comes from a very small town, and there's not even a damn stoplight in this town.
Right.
So it's all stop signs. One of these really rural areas, and they played in a very small town with, and when they played in high school, they only played 8 players on each side of the ball, and I don't know for what reason. Maybe they didn't have enough kids in the, you know, school to fill the team of, typically that's 11 on both sides, right? But Matt Rule loves this kid. He went out, he wanted a local kid. He's making an effort to really recruit, just inside the state. And this guy won all over the field. He played quarterback, he played defensive end, he played almost every position, and he played a little tight end, wide receiver. But man, did he look really good on the field. He
Mhm.
looked like,
Yeah.
I mean, he just won 2 track meets apparently in Nebraska this spring. So he's got some wheels to him. He may end up being a wide receiver, but Matt Rule, you interview Matt Rule, he just lights up. I saw a video where he's talking about this kid, and kind of like what you said, you didn't know what to do with him. I'm not sure Matt Rule knows what to do with him, but he said he's one of the most athletic kids that he's ever recruited, and that says a lot, right? So Thomas Fedone right now is the starter at Nebraska. He had 260 measly, receiving yards last year. So Carter Nelson's probably a wild card. Maybe should have been my number 7, but I'm going to put him in at number 5 because I really just liked what I saw on the field, and I just love the story. Some small town kid who didn't even play, a typical 11 on 11.
Yeah, yeah. I could see him starting out at receiver, and then as he gains more weight and just gets more nuance, maybe moving the tight end at that point. He's
Mhm,
215 pounds at tight end at Nebraska. I'm just trying to figure that part out, but
mhm.
yeah, you see it immediately on the film, though. I mean, this kid is a lot of fun to watch, and he could be very good. So I'm glad you put him at 5. I just wasn't sure what to do with him. I have him in my top 10 though. Where are we? I am at tight
Number
end
5.
5, and I'm going with Landon Thomas, the FSU tight end. I think with his skill set as a blocker, as a pass catcher, I really liked what I saw from him. And going back to the Nick O'Leary days, and just the way that they used Jaheim Bell. I mean, it wasn't the best, but FSU really likes getting their tight ends involved, and it's going to help their young quarterbacks. They got DJ that's going to be this upcoming season. But when Luke comes in, I actually think that Landon Thomas is going to be a benefactor in that offense. I think he's got a great overall skill set, might be used as a blocker a little bit more than I like, but the pass catching upside, the athleticism is all there. And I think that he could do really well working within this system. So Landon Thomas is my number 5.
Yeah, he's my number 7. I agree with you, and I got a couple other points when I get to number 7, but I agree with you.
Okay.
He really I liked his film. Number 6 for me, went with Michael Smith from South Carolina. He's a converted wide receiver. He got offers from Ohio State, Texas, Georgia, Bama, Florida, and Penn State. They were all actively seeking his services. Physical blocker. Again, the physicality really stood out. The yards after the catch ability really stood out to me. Lenore Sellers, the new quarterback for South
Mhm.
Carolina this year, has been really talking him up and apparently been working with him. I always kind of like to do some interviews. I always like to dig a little deeper, just to see if people are talking about some of these players. And he's getting a little bit of buzz. But I really liked what I saw in the field. We talked about at the beginning of the show, athleticism and physicality and space creation and good hands and ball skills. And I thought Michael Smith just looked like an explosive player. One thing I did, and really there's nobody at South Carolina in the tight end room that is a Devy target right now. So there's a lot of opportunity, I think, maybe not this year, but for the future. But it's something I just wanted to kind of mention on here on the podcast and on the YouTube channel is 5-star Nick Harbor, right? A Devy asset that a lot of people have been excited about. He missed
Mhm.
all of spring and all of summer because he is in the Olympic trials. So just
Mhm.
as an FYI, and there's reports that he's not really going to be a starter, that he's going to be, I think he has a lot of other interests other than football. So that might be somebody who you might want to, if you've got shares, might want to consider moving off of. I'm not sure he's going to have the production profile by the time he's draft eligible, given the fact that he's doing so many other sports and has other interests as well.
Yeah, that's a good call, man. I want Nick Harbor to pan out just because he is going to be a freak in that combine. He's gonna break it, so that would be great. But Michael Smith, I don't know how I did it. I must have missed him. I did not. I don't have him on my list, so I'm so
Mm.
glad you brought him up, and I got to
Yeah,
watch
right.
him. I don't know
Good
how I
stuff.
pulled that off. So this is why it's good, right? We got
That's
our
right.
own
We get
list. It
more
works out.
names. Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
Tight end 6, I have Gavin Hoffman, the Iowa tight end that you had at 3, and I completely agree with everything you said, man. I see a lot of what Iowa looks for in their tight ends. He's the multi-sport, he's well-rounded, he's got the athleticism, and it pops off immediately on film. So this is definitely a kid that I will be looking at seriously in Devy circles because I think he could put it all together.
Yeah, number 7 for me is Landon Thomas, Florida State. You already talked about him. A couple notes I add here on my scouting notes. I thought the body control was phenomenal, the way he
Hmm.
went up
Yeah.
after the ball. And I liked how he had a very quick transition from when he caught the ball, immediately turned upfield, making guys miss, and very physical and really tough with the ball in his hand, stiff arming guys. And you could see that he was a dog out there really trying to fight for every yard. So Landon Thomas came in at my number 7, and Jaheim Bell's gone. And, Luke Kromenhoek, the future
Kromenhoek?
quarterback. Yeah,
Yeah.
Kromenhoek. Yeah, Luke, right? Maybe these two will, be something together as they grow up together.
Yeah, I think they will be. So that's gonna be a lot of fun to watch. And then my last one, number 7, is Christian Bentancur, who you talked about. And I agree with every point that you made, man. I really think that he could be a great all-around tight end in this office. But as a pass catcher, with the physicality and the athleticism that he delivers, I mean, this is the guy who should easily be a 700 to 800 yard type of receiver at tight end if they allow him to be. And I'm just hoping that the quarterback and the system doesn't hold him back because the upside of his, overall skill set is tremendous. So I really like that you have him so high too.
Yeah. So my last question here about these tight ends. We're through eight rounds through our 15 round C2C supplemental draft that we're doing now. Are you going to be taking any of these guys? I mean, you are in my league. You are my enemy at this moment, but you can answer
Yeah,
the
yeah, but
question.
we're in the middle
Yeah.
rounds and it's tight end, so I'm not too worried about that. Yeah, absolutely. I have a few that are on my radar. I would have taken Odum if you already did not. He's definitely on my list, and there's a few other guys that I would probably take. There's probably about 3 I'd be serious about that are in the 7, just based on opportunity and college fantasy and how I feel about them translating over to the NFL. I actually think this is a pretty good group. I was pleasantly surprised. It was just really hard because they played a lot of receiver in the film and
And
not
I
enough tight end to get a good read. I want
yeah.
to ask you though, is the number one overall tight end unanimously in Trey Des Green the most underwhelming prospect at number one tight end that you've seen in a long time? Because this dude looked like a 2-star in his film. I don't
Yeah,
understand the hype at all.
I thought he looked thin. I just didn't see the separation. Like, to me, it was all
No,
about, especially after they have the ball in their hands, were they distancing players? Did he have that speed?
right?
And I watched it, I just was like, "Okay," and then go back to it, it just didn't do it for me, so I don't know.
No, I don't know. Maybe there's film that we don't have a chance to see that we should be able to
Yeah.
see. Changes things, but I just didn't see it. He wasn't a yak guy. He just looked lackadaisical to me. That
Mhm.
I was kind of taken back as of how he got to number one.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a case study, I think.
Yeah. Or we're
We'll
just
see.
wrong, who knows? Alright, there you
Oh,
guys
we're just
got it.
wrong.
Those
Right.
are our top 7 tight ends.